Hey family, thank you for tuning into Our Roots podcast with 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲, where only the strongest roots see the light. Brought to you by Botani Got Candles and More. And if you haven't had an opportunity, please be sure to like, comment, share this video, and be sure to subscribe to the channel. And don't forget about that membership program with all those great perks.
That is right. Our membership program is growing. You know, we offer lots of perks. Hey, we have direct communication with you. You know, you can call in and join us virtually. You know, we had a couple people join us the last few sessions. So
yeah, I was happy about that. Definitely for them to come in and just be able to speak to you guys is really exciting, because we like to know that, you know, the 40,000 people that have subscribed to us, that they're real. And, you know, every time we have a membership program and live, we're actually talking to you. So it's nice to know that you guys exist.
Cool. So what are we talking about today?
I'm actually really looking forward to this episode. It's one that's been requested for quite some time. Today is going to be about the Iyami Osorongo.
Okay, say it a little slower for the people in the back.
Iyami Osorongo.
Iyami Osorongo.
Exactly. So this title is actually given to a group or coven of ancestral feminine deities that tend to delve into the diabolical aspect of things.
Ooh.
So the word Iyami means my mother, right? Osorongo, they say, refers to a sound that certain birds make in Nigeria. And this deity or entity or group is associated with the birds, right? Why is that? Ancestrally, birds have been seen as a very feminine animal. And the reason being is because the correlation between their reproductive process and the modern woman's. If you notice, what do women have to be able to give us these beautiful things called children? They have eggs, right? The same way birds do. So this concept goes all the way back to the dawn of humanity, where Ifa says that to a certain degree, women are descendants of birds, and men as well, but our anatomy is a little bit more different. But they say that the Iyami Osorongo were present at the dawn of creation, and they were seen as actually the bodyguards of Olodumare. Their job is a little bit nefarious, right? So when you look at the grand scheme of repercussion universally, you have Olodumare, who is the giver of Aje, or grace, or blessings, right? Which equates to progress, prosperity, pleasantries, all of these different things. But you have a certain group of people that are in that upper inner echelon of deities that begins with Eshu, right? Eshu is the guy that keeps the balance. In the 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁, he was identified as the deity that is going to decide who deserves what. And he was going to test humanity to see if they deserve the blessing that Olodumare, their father, wanted to give them, to see if they deserved it, right? So this Odu states that, or this, and all of this can really be seen in Odus like 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗁, 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗁, 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗁 was also present at the dawn of creation to a certain degree as well, with the formation of the cosmos. But when Eshu would decide that somebody was not deserving of the blessing or the ire, and they fell into the state of Ayewo, the ones that would be sent out to install the ajogun, or the negativities, into the bodies or situations of the person were the Iyami Osorongo. Now, how were these entities able to do this? They were able to do this because they are symbolized by the coagulation of blood, right? They live within our blood. They're our ancestral mothers, so they're within our DNA to a certain degree. And what occurs is they are linked to all of the worst diseases we could think of. Cancer and anything that could be destructive within the body. The ironic part about it is them being associated with the coagulation of blood, they actually have to do with cancer, which has to do with, you know, an basically regulated mitotic division of cells. You know, it's also a result of mucosa buildup, like Dr. Sebi was able to identify. And these deities have to do with this and install that same disease. So when we talk about why they're associated with the coagulations of blood, it is because their sole function is to make sure we are unable to perform the sacrifices necessary to get rid of the negativity, right? So what does that mean? In the last video of Osain, we spoke about a pataki, where in the 𝘃𝗶𝗶𝗶 Sunche, Shango and Osain identified that to be able to feed the Orisha, they needed to be covered in a sacred liquid, which was going to deter the coagulation process. And why was that? So that the Iyami Osorongo couldn't come and corrupt the sacrifice before the Orisha was able to receive it enough to where they were able to have a positive effect on the client that's doing it, right? So that's why we do all of these preliminary, processes and preparations, so that we have enough time for the Orisha to get the life energy from the animal before the Iyami Osorongo can coagulate the blood and corrupt it. That's why you can't just get, you can't just go to your butcher and get some, pig blood and pour it on an Orisha. By then it's tainted because it's completely coagulated. So if you notice in Nigeria sometimes, they won't feed a deity directly like we do in Cuba. And the reason being is they'll get this nice bowl or whatever they have, and they'll feed the bowl directly. And what will happen is they'll be pouring salt in the blood and whisking it, almost like scrambled eggs, to keep the blood from coagulating. Once the animal has completely, desanguinated or bled out, at that point is when they pour the blood on top of the deity. Many clans do this, and it is legitimate because of the process they're doing. They also might throw some gin in there, maybe some honey, depending on the deity, and then feed each deity accordingly. But look at all of the process that goes in just to keep these women at bay. When it comes to the Iyami Osorongo, the story goes that they first manifested on Earth in the 𝘃𝗶𝗶𝗶𝗶, right? It's also known as 𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗶𝗶, or the sign of destruction, or 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁, which is the sign that carried the birds, right, or the feathers and the wings. And there's this story in 𝗃𝗶𝗁 where it speaks of these two sacred lakes, right, that everyone swore not to touch. But 𝗃𝗶𝗶𝗶, being 𝗃𝗶𝗶𝗶, said, no one's going to tell me what to do. I'm the first Orisha. I'm the extension of Olodumare on earth. How dare anyone?
Exactly.
Especially these witches, forgive me. And 𝗃𝗶𝗶𝗶 went and drank the sacred water. But what he didn't realize was there was a crow in one of the trees there that started, is it a caw, I guess?
Yeah, they caw.
He started cawing, and the other ones came, because the truce had been broken, and now it was a free-for-all open season on the Orishas. So 𝗃𝗶𝗶𝗶, being a coward at that moment, and realizing death was imminent, went running to the house of, I believe, whatever Orisha was closest, right? And when the birds flocked into the house, they killed that Orisha, but 𝗃𝗶𝗶𝗶 escaped. Now, they say that 𝗃𝗶𝗶𝗶 did this a couple hundred times, and all of the Orishas were dying. So he arrived in the house of Ogun, and the same thing happened. But before that happened, Ogun was able to construct a knife for him. And this knife is known as the 𝗃𝗲𝗿 Orisha. 𝗃𝗲 means knife or machete, however you want to translate it. And from there, he went running into the house of Orunmila, where Eshu lived at the front door. So when 𝗃𝗶𝗶𝗶 arrived, Orunmila had heard what was occurring and had already performed divination. Sansan Meji was revealed, Ebo was constructed, etc., where Ifa said they needed to create a trap for all of these entities, right? So they spread a table, and on each of the seats, let's say symbolically it was 9 seats, I don't know, however many, and Eshu actually put an invisible adhesive on the bottom of them, right? So when they were going to enter into Orumila's house, Orunmila said, hey, 𝗃𝗶𝗶𝗶's here. I'm going to give them to you. No issues. But before you have the main course, please have some appetizers. We laid out some seeds for you guys. Yeah. And they were like, oh, wow, very nice treatment. We're going to kill you anyway, but, we'll make it quick.
Oh, no.
It was like, thank you. So they all sat down at the banquet, and they were commiserating and eating. And when they got nice and full, and they were ready to eat 𝗃𝗶𝗶𝗶, and they tried to get up and they couldn't, they saw that now this was the time to execute. So 𝗶𝗸𝗏 threw, it was kind of like what is it, Endgame, where Captain America gets the hammer.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
you are worthy.
Yeah,
𝗶𝗸𝗏 threw the conical 𝗃𝗏𝗶𝗏/sword to Olodumare, and Olodumare started hacking away at all the birds, right?
Okay.
And right when he was about to kill the last bird transformed into an adolescent woman, a young lady, I don't know, early 20s. And 𝗶𝗸𝗏 told Olodumare to kill the last one, and they would never have to deal with this again. But, the woman started talking, saying, hey, I'm Iyami. The only reason we attacked was because we were provoked. But if you kill me, you guys are going to die anyway, because who are you going to procreate with? And Olodumare had a cooler head, and Eshu looked at him like, don't listen to 𝗶𝗸𝗏. And Olodumare spared her. But they had to make a new truce, and it was going to be between Olodumare and the Iyami. And the truce is that the Iyami cannot indiscriminately kill any further. They had to respect the children of Olodumare, who were going to, from that day forward, offer a process known as Epese, which I'll explain after this story, and that it was going to be offered at, I think the first one was at the three corners, representing the three groups of the Iyami that converged on that, or 𝗃𝗏𝗏𝗃, as it's known.
Okay.
And they would invoke them with the bell, and they would basically receive those offerings rather than feeling the need to devour humanity, right? Until this day, we still perform this process. It's also an interesting note that the Iyami did not attack unprovoked. And you could say women are the same way. We as men, sometimes we don't realize how annoying we could be. And we do things that provoke them. Before we get into the Epese concept, it's interesting the correlation and analogy towards the menstrual cycle, right? And if you notice, menses, not to be too graphic, is coagulated blood. And they say that during the menses, the woman becomes consumed by the Iyami Osorongo, making her tap into that diabolical feminine energy, which is why women can't stand us during that week, and we need to leave them alone, and we need to make offerings and appease to them.
Ice cream.
And whatever they want. And it is an interesting correlation because these are concepts that come back 5,000 years from Africa. We were all going through the same thing back then. But the same way we had to make offerings to the Iyami to not destroy Earth, we have to make offerings to our mothers, our wives, our daughters, our aunts, our cousins that are feminine, all these different things to maintain peace. There is no worse situation to be in this whole spirituality other than owing something to Eshu, which might not be as bad as owing something to the Iyami Osorongo. It's worse. And it could even be that the offering doesn't have to even be within formal Ifa context. Let's say you forgot your anniversary, brother, or you forgot, I don't know what you forgot, or you did something. This is the kind of curse and negativity, or 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏, that even an ebo cannot get off you. So it's very important to always maintain the feminine aspect of our lives in order and under control, because that was always Olumila's key point. If you notice, Olodumare always had his women happy, whatever it took. And you look at recent studies, whether it's during menses or during pregnancy, there is no point or productivity in debating with a woman who is going through these processes, because there is this thing called estrogen. In the 𝗃𝗏𝗶𝗏𝗃, estrogen was seen as the most productive and most diabolical hormone/molecule in all of existence. So Ifa says we have to make sure the estrogen is happy, right? Epese, right? Pe means to call, and 𝘃 means to work or offer to a certain degree. So when we say Epese, it means I'm making an offering. And it's so old a concept that we know exactly who we're making the offering to. We're making it to the Iyami Osorongo, right? How do you perform Epese? Epese should be recommended every time the person comes Ayewo or Osobo. Why is this? Because the deities that are going to install the ayewo into the person's flesh and scenario are the Iyami Osorongo. And the reason they install it in the flesh is because that's what they want to consume. This is diabolical. It gets worse. So what are common offerings for 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁? The 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗁𝗁 has a story where things were going negatively. And, people would sacrifice animals, consume the muscle or the parts that seemed appetizing, and everything else, like the offal, as it's known. The guts, the heart, the kidneys, certain things were being thrown out. And there was a lot of negativity going around. So divination was performed. Babao Sameji was revealed, where Ifa said that they needed to take the old or the leftover parts and make offerings of them to the trees, which seemed very random and very odd. But they did it. And when they placed the excess on the tree, they noticed that the birds and the crows started coming down and eating it, which was a very interesting phenomenon. Ironically, every time I have a 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁 pending, or whenever a client has one as well, ironically, crows come out of nowhere, by the way. And the crows started eating, and things seemingly got better. But the crows, after they ate that, they started wanting to eat the people. So 𝘃𝗶𝗍𝗁 was like, throw red palm oil on the food. And they threw red palm oil on the food, and then when the crows ate it, they became full. Because the Iyami Osorongo were bloodthirsty, and the red palm oil replaced blood. So the first offering to the witches, or the elders of the night, as they're known respectfully, was that, where the entrails of the animals were placed at the foot of trees so that the birds can consume. Other common things that are utilized in Iyami Osorongo offerings, besides the entrails of the meat of the animals that are sacrificed, pork, because it resembles human flesh. Beef as well is very popular. They're partial to 𝗃𝗶𝗍𝗁𝗍, which are the small bananas. Boiled eggs are huge, like beyond huge. I've also offered scrambled, raw. It depends on what they want at that moment. Shrimp, ironically, as well. They ultimately can consume anything, but the only taboo that the Iyami Osorongo have is yam. And the reason being is because in that same story of Babao Sameji, where Obatala and all this was going on, they put yam in the food that they were eating, and it caused their mouth to get closed shut so that they couldn't attack or eat. So from that day forward, they said, we don't touch yam. Don't ever put it in any of our offerings. And it's to the point where some brothers won't even do a bowl with a tablet that has utilized yam powder if they know that within that bowl, there's going to be an 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁 or a food to the witches offered, even if they're using 𝘃𝗶𝗍𝗁 at that moment. Which takes us to the next point. To be able to perform 𝘃𝗶𝗍𝗁 or offerings to the Iyami Osorongo, it has to be done in 𝘃𝗶𝗁 powder, right? Now, what is 𝘃𝗶𝗁 powder? 𝘃𝗶𝗁 powder is 𝘃𝗶𝗁, which means powder from the sacred tree of Osun. And what happens is this sacred tree was identified in the Odu of 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗏. And, the Iyami, even after coming up with this pact with Orunmila, they still wanted to consume Orunmila. Because of all his knowledge and, his good character and all these different things. And he said, well, you can't have me, but you can have the manifestation of me that is in nature, which is the Osun tree. So what happened is when that tree fell and the termites started devouring it, that powder from the body of Orula that was the Osun tree became the blood of Orula, which was the 𝘃𝗶𝗁𝗁. So that same powder was invoked with the verse of destruction, as it's known, or the verse of Isan San Meji, which I could recite, but I won't recite because we're not doing 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁, and I don't want to call destruction upon Phil's studio.
Please don't.
And after the offering is made with red palm oil, which can never go missing, that powder is placed on top of it, right? So that the Iyami are able to consume the blood of Orunmila, right? The same way when we perform ebo, it's done with 𝘃𝗶𝗁, and we wash ourselves or are cleansed in the blood of Orula. Kind of sounds like concepts from other religions that say they bathe in the blood of their Messiah that we will not name. And that is how you make offerings to the Iyami Osorongo. But here's a great point to bring up right now. The only people that are able to make offerings to the Iyami Osorongo, other than people initiated into that organization, are babalawos. Because the only one that was able to negotiate with the Iyami and also spare them was Oromila, where that same office and, if you want to call it, privilege or ability was given to the children of Ifa as babalawos. So unfortunately now, the Iyami Osorongo are somewhat of a trending topic. It's something that's a little obscure, people are interested in, what have you. And it is interesting because it is, within the Afro-Cuban Lukumi context, a little understimulated. And needless to say, it's as important as, it is more important than even doing the ebo, because if you don't do the 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 and you do the ebo will not function with the same efficiency, right? But what you have now online is a bunch of people who aren't babalawos saying, oh, make this offering to the Iyami Osorongo. Or, you could do this to appease the Iyami Osorongo. You do not invoke these women unless they want to be invoked, because it's one of those things, you just don't bother them,
Yeah, this seems like you need to approach this with extreme caution.
It is one of the most delicate processes within our whole spirituality, and then it's also one of the most uncomfortable, because I kid you not, Phil, when you're in the room and you're doing this and you're doing it correctly and you're doing the verses that go and whatnot, the energy in the room changes completely.
So
it becomes ominous.
Real question here, ignorant though, but why would someone want to even go through that process? What would they gain?
Because we have no choice. Because once these energies focus on you, and once you've fallen into disalignment to the point where you've garnered their attention, now it's open season on you. So they're like, oh, that's a free meal. If you're not living correctly, or you're doing things inappropriately, or you're not keeping up with your spiritual well-being. And what are some of the symptoms of somebody that has the Iyami hot on their trail? They're in complete disarray with the feminine aspect of their life. You're noticing random, ridiculous arguments with your partner. Be careful with any negative interactions with any women whatsoever, even if you're a woman. Apart from that, it could also make things very difficult for a woman that's being attacked by these energies as well, because it can make it hard for her to have a relationship, maintain a relationship. There may be some hormonal imbalances. I mean, cancer, unfortunately, is the thing that these women deal with the best, because they're all about the coagulation. And you look at a tumor, it's nothing more than cells and blood and accumulation that is just unregulated, so they're going to town on you. So, it's very easy to identify because it has very peculiar traits. You'll notice as well, if you have a pending 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏, or if the Iyami are hot on you, you'll notice vultures on your property or wherever you go, or you'll notice crows and things like that. They manifest through birds of prey, like owls, those kind of, the raptors. I don't know, maybe Alfred Hitchcock, maybe he was going through it when he came out with the movie Birds. Now kind of looking at it, he was on point.
Oh, really?
You know what I'm saying? So, all of these things are indicative of this energy, and it's very nefarious. And you realize it just from what they eat. If you notice, this concept can also be found in the 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁𝗁, because in the 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁𝗁 was where, human beings started consuming, like chitlins, because they found it delicious.
Who?
I mean, this story goes all the way back to Africa.
I know, but
you know
still.
what I'm saying?
You ever, off topic, you ever have chitlins?
Bro, I'm ashamed to say I have not.
Dude, don't be ashamed.
I am ashamed to say, because, I consider myself a soul food connoisseur. I'm from Opalaka.
No.
And it never happened. But I was always told that if I ever did, to make sure they came from trusted hands and they were washed well. But the owners of this part of the body, the intestine, upper and lower, are the Iyami. Because, I guess you could say Babao Shemeji is unfortunately the Odu of soul food. Because what happened was, as human beings, were consuming all of the innards, specifically the intestine, because they enjoyed it, after they were cleaned thoroughly. And they started noticing their health was suffering, like bad, like cancer, obesity, like blood pressure, all of these different things. And they went for divination. Oromila revealed Babao Shemeji, and he said, what are you guys eating lately? They said, man, we haven't stopped frying that pork, man. I tell you. And then he was like, you have to stop immediately, because it's been identified that that food belongs to an energy that does not like to share, and it was the Iyami Osorongo, where they had to relinquish that and prepare it in a specific way to be able to provide it to them, right? Because that's what they would consume, because they said the muscle and things like that, the clean meat is for human beings. But the energy of life, the life, if you notice, the most important parts of the body are the ones we don't eat. Like, you'll have a drumstick, you'll have a chicken breast, you know, but no one, I mean, very rarely is like, yeah, let me get some chicken intestine, you know?
Ugh.
And that's because those are actually the most important parts, actually nutritious parts of the animal to a certain degree spiritually. And that's why the Iyami said, if you guys want to survive, give me that part so I don't feel the need to eat you, because I'm going to go wherever that is. So if it's in your stomach, that's where I'm going to attack. And that's another big place where the Iyami really go to town, is the stomach. They can't get enough of it, like the tripe and things like that. Those are all parts, like the gizzard, all of those things have to go in the Epese, because that's just what they want, because they want the life energy. They're not worried about the taste. So it's interesting because when you look at animals other than human beings, they eat all of that, you know?
Yeah.
And the interesting part is where are they on the evolutionary scale? You know, even though they may not have the logical intelligence that we have, I mean, but you talk about ferociousness, they, you know, they say that apex predators always go for the same body part every time, the liver, where they eat the bile and everything, you know, and it brings something out in them that we can't even handle. You know, so the only thing that really separated us on the food chain from being food or being predators was not consuming that. Because if we would have consumed that from the dawn or continued, the other parts of our brain wouldn't have developed, thus allowing us to be the sentient beings that we are now. But it came from the chicken breast, not eating the chicken, whatever the else.
Wow.
You know? So it goes that deep with these energies, you know? Yeah.
Does this say anything in why we what organ that we use? Is it our spleen?
What about it?
Because we don't. That's why we don't have our spleen, right? Some people don't have their spleen because we don't eat the bile or bones and stuff anymore, right?
I guess, yeah. We kind of, I mean, I would imagine that's on the 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗁𝗀𝗐. You know, when human beings started consuming different proteins and things like that. 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗁𝗀𝗍 speaks of it as well, where human beings became carnivores rather than just being herbivores. Well, we became omnivores ultimately. Yeah. But originally it was just agriculture or whatever we could find, as hoarders/gatherers. But, you know, that was a very significant change, because if you look at our Neanderthal stage, caveman stage, what have you, we were eating raw meat and all these other things. Now, mind you, I don't know how strong we were. I don't know how resilient we were. I'm sure they were both. But, you know, as far as, you know, logic and progress and all of those other things, that's really what separated us from the two classes. Because if we would have continued with that same gastronomy, we wouldn't be right here having this, you know, discussion, you know, because we wouldn't have any sentient thought per se. It would be straight instinct, reflex, survival. So that's why they say that these energies are so old, because it goes all the way back to the dawn, where we're like, this is what we're going to eat.
So, excuse me, just for sounding ignorant.
No.
Like, so how do you protect yourself against like this latching onto you?
There's a couple different things. Make the women in your life happy, right? Sincerely. Because the Iyami Osorongo don't appreciate mistreatment of women. Like, they take it as a personal offense. You know, making sure you're doing your annual checkup with your 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗁, because only 𝗿𝗶𝗁s can perform this. There is no debate about that. You know, and just performing the recommendations, especially, you know, your 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗲s and your 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲s, you know, have them done on your behalf. And then, you know, aside from that, living morally, ethically with 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲, and you should be all right. But, you know, they are the installers of the negativity. There's actually, and the thing about it is, the Iyami Osorongo are present in every sign of Ifa, because you cannot have an Odu of Ifa without the Iyami Osorongo. Every single sign has an occurrence that has to do with these energies.
Wait, why? Is it like a yin yang thing?
Pretty much, it's the balance. Because if for you to have a sign of Ifa, there has to be a positive side and a negative side. If you notice, there's two legs in each of them. So to be able to accomplish the positive, you lean more towards Olodumare and the Orishas and things like that. But to fall into the negative, you need Eshu and you need the Iyami, because they work hand in hand. And here's another interesting thing about the relationship between Eshu and the Iyami Osorongo. All of the other Orishas have to have the sacred herb water on them to be able to eat without the Iyami stealing the sacrifice. The only deity that the Iyami Osorongo respect besides Olodumare is Eshu. He's the only one that they want no issues with, but he doesn't want any issues with them either. And of course, when I say that, I also mean Orumila, but in a different context, because even when we feed Orula, we still put the herb water. If you don't put the herb water on Eshu or do, it makes no difference. Eshu's going to get his food. Because in the 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁, 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁 said, nothing will stop me or nothing will get between me and my dinner. So even them, and remember, Eshu was there killing them with Orula. So they were like, we'll leave that guy alone, because he's kind of in his own space. But that is an interesting dynamic, to the point where one of the destinations for the 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁, or the food to the witches, can be in front of Eshu. There's also another position known as 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏, which is known as Eshu's wife, which is to his side, where they can eat as well. I've heard of them eating in front of the Didi Ogun, or Iledi Ogun, which is the Ogun shrine, just out of respect for him having the knife. But usually the offerings to the Iyami, 3 corners, 4 corners, front door, back door.
Is there a certain process order that you have to do?
Yeah, to be able to perform the 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁, absolutely. Like, you have to do your invocation, you have to know the verse of destruction, which I will not say. Okay. You ask, is it adequate? Where does it want to go? Another thing that the person has to do that's very key is that they have to clean themselves with the material. The person that's getting it done for them. Why? Because we're trying to get the person's scent on the material, because that's what deters the Iyami from going to them, and rather than them going to the offering. So let's say, a sign comes out, right? You come in Ayewo, we're asking the 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁, and I ask 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁, which is, pork or meat of a pig. So what you do is you have the client grab it, cleanse themselves with it and place it into the, the ceremonial plate, usually a clay plate or a 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 or an 𝗃𝗏𝗏. There is a specific plate that they use in Nigeria known as awosobi, which, can get very expensive when you're trying to do this over and over again. I mean, it's sad to say, but the majority of the people I consult come Ayewo or come negative. I think that's just a reflection of life or just the way the world is right now. But once that's done, then you can proceed, because at that point, the negativity and the energy and the scent and all that is on the meat rather than the person. So ideally, what happens is it'll go to a place that'll distract it from the 𝗃𝗶𝗁. So what does that mean? When we get to the point of 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁, we have to identify whether it eats inside or outside of the 𝗃𝗶𝗁. Because if it eats inside, that means the Iyami were going to go into the 𝗃𝗶𝗁 and eat the materials before they made it to heaven to be received. Not good.
Oh, so you're like skipping a step.
Yeah, it's like you did that for nothing. You'll get some results, but it won't be the same. Now, there's an option, if the oracle identifies it can be fed outside, right, where you have to find a location for it to be taken to ceremonially with said verses, with the Ada Orisha, which is the bell. And the Ada Orisha is also interesting as well, because the Ada Orisha is technically the bell of 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗁, right, the agogo, as it's known. So when you look at the agogo 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗁, it'll have the bell right at the bottom. But at the top, it has like a feather, right? And people be like, oh, that's the pigeon feather or the dove feather, right? Mm-hmm. Isn't it interesting that it's a feather, making reference to the Iyami once more? But in Africa, that feather has it's sharpened, right? It has a blade on it. And that is actually the bell that is used to sacrifice the animals to Orisha. Why is that bell used? Because they say that the Iyami will not get close to a sacrifice where the bell is present, but they will pay attention to it. but it causes them to have more respect as far as space.
Is it because of the frequency or something?
No, it's because they're afraid. That was the same thing that was used to kill them when they were at the table.
Oh.
So they were like, oh, he's got the blade in his hand. Let's wait till he's done. Then when it's done, you notice the blood starts coagulating. That's because the Iyami have penetrated that sacrifice. And at that point, it's done anyway. The Orisha got what it's wanted, and it's corrupted blood. You know, they have to do with everything from infection, disease, everything. Absolutely everything. But they are the most difficult because they're the ones who install it. Most people look at 𝗵𝗸𝗶𝗶 and be like, oh, he'll make you sick, or 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁 will make... No one makes you sick. They send sickness your way, but for it to be able to penetrate in your body, the Iyami Osorongo have to contaminate the blood. So that's why it's so important to make sure you're interacting with people who know how to get these things done for you. Because for some people, it's not a huge issue, but for some, like let's say you're 𝗵𝗸𝗶𝗶𝗁 and your hand of Ifar as a 𝗵𝗸𝗶𝗁. Let's say you're 𝘃𝗶𝗸𝗁𝗁. Let's say you're 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁𝗁 or 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁𝗁. There's an amazing story that was brought to my attention. Most people have it, I believe, in the Odu. Is it 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁𝗁, Joseph? Yes. But it's actually, there's another version that's even more complete in the Odu of 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁𝗁, where the farmer, had crops. And he would grow corn and things like that. And he had an issue because the birds would come around and eat all his corn, and this caused a big issue. He wasn't making money. He wasn't able to provide for his family. His wife was annoyed, all these symptoms. He went running to Oromila. Divination was performed. Either one of these Odus was revealed, where Ifa said that he needed to perform a bowl with certain materials to be able to construct something that was going to defend his crop. And when he did, he manifested the scarecrow, right? And when he actually implanted the scarecrow in the field, they actually, dispersed. They wouldn't come around. They were afraid. It had energy in it. The birds were nothing more than the Iyami Osorongo. When you look at the symbolism of the corn, it represents all that's positive in life: nourishment, prosperity, unity, all those different things. If you notice, the problems they were causing the man were very symbolic of, the things that go through when, we don't have the feminine aspect of our life in order. And then the scarecrow, they say, is actually 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁𝗁. 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁 is Osun, or the metal rooster that's given with the warriors. But in 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁 practice, you actually get 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁 or 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗃𝗃, right? Which is an iron staff that has a bird on the top of it that actually is used to scare away the Iyami. And the reason being is because a bird respects a bird. So when the Iyami are trying to penetrate in your home or cause havoc, if they see Osun at the door, that's why back in the days in Cuba, you'd notice everybody have Osun above their front door facing outwards. It was to keep the Iyami and the negativity out. So you'll usually notice that this is planted in the front of a 𝗵𝗸𝗁𝗁's house. Mine is in front of my house. And it's to keep the Iyami and the negativity away. So it's really interesting stuff. And some of those concepts can be found in the Odu 𝗃𝗱𝗁𝗁 as well as 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁𝗁.
Okay. All right. We're running a little bit low on time here, but you may need to do a part 2 on this. This is.
How much time did we get on this one?
We're pushing about 40 minutes so far.
Yeah, I'll do a part 2 on this one, no problem, because there's so many more. There's so many more pataquis to go into with them conceptually, just to understand. But I mean, I think we did all right. We got over the Epese process, some of the Odus, why they are the way they are. I think people are really going to enjoy this one. I enjoy talking about them, not because I necessarily enjoy interacting with them, but there are positive things that can be begotten from these ladies. So, lasting message before we eventually come out with part 2, which may be sooner than we expect. Keep the women happy.
Oh yeah. I think I have different elevator music for today because this is just a different vibe.
I like it. Oh,
all right.
Sade.
Maybe. All right, folks. This is a shout out to all the members who show love and support the channel. If you are wondering how to join, there's a little button under the video that says join. It gives you access to 3 separate tiers, all offering different perks and advantages, which could be extra videos, early releases, or access to Joseph and discounts in the merchandise store.
Get in there.
So let's show some love to the VIPs.
Love.
We got Omi Koladi.
Thank you, 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲.
We got Ravi.
Ah,
Shout out to Brandon Guerrero. We spoke to him earlier.
big shout out to Brandon. Good luck.
Shout out to 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲.
Thank you, Khadijah.
And some super fans here. We got Sage.
Super.
We got Alyssa Nave.
Thank you.
And shout out to Derek Jones.
Love you, members. You guys are the best part of us. BotanicACandlesandMore.com is up and running for all your service and product needs. We ship. Be sure to let somebody know about the membership program that can gain some value from it. If you can't listen to the or watch the podcast on YouTube, be sure to listen to it on all the other major platforms. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. A big thank you from all of us here at Our Roots Podcast. And until next time, see the light.